Alrighty, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Onside Inside podcast. I am your host, Corey Tompkins, and today it's a little bit of a different one. Today we are not really talking construction at all. We are actually going down the rabbit hole of the podcast, and we're going to be pumping through some tips and tricks, some statistics of our journey. Now, when I say our, I want you guys... It is Nick on the other side of here. So Nick, as you guys may or may not be well aware, he is the guy that is the man behind the camera, the guy that looks after and runs everything behind the scenes. Audio, podcast, video, content for the company page, this, that, and the other. He is the one-stop shop. So Nick, without further ado, welcome to the podcast. And you've been on here before.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
But yeah, so... You guys that are listening, basically, we're just going to be talking about our journey to episode 21, and Nick's going to be able to give you guys some statistics now, and I don't really know, but he's going to know a bit more about, because in this day and age, every man and their dog has a podcast. So, Nick,
True.
What is some key statistics?
I think they need to know why episode 21 is important first.
Yeah.
So, out of all podcasts that start, like you said, freaking everyone's dog's mum has a podcast these days, but only 10% of those people make it past episode 3.
Episode 3?
That's just 3 episodes. Only 10% make it past episode 3.
I wonder why that is the case. Yeah.
But this is even crazier. Of that 10%, only 10% of that 10% make it past episode 20. So 0.1% of all people that start make it past episode 20.
That's crazy.
Yep.
Yeah. This is something that me and Nick, we've we go through ups and downs, me and you, like in regards to getting guests, how it evolves. Oh, it's the reality of it, you know what I mean? But I remember saying to Nick well on the piece that, my one objective, regardless of whatever we do, is just to stay consistent. So day in and day out, finding guests, because ultimately when you're starting out a podcast, not everyone wants to fucking jump on, you know what I mean? And that's the hard thing. And I think as it evolves and you gain an audience, it becomes easier. And, I think from my experience anyway, like Nick can talk about what it's like dealing with guests and getting them on and having that whole thing. But, starting on, I'll take you guys on a bit of a journey. So if you guys that are the OGs that have listened to this from day one, gaining confidence of talking on the mic and all that sort of stuff, as you guys, if you want to go back to episode 1 and listen to me then, to listen to me now, it's a little bit different. So, but gaining confidence when talking in front of the camera and talking in front of the mic and, going through the rounds of basically hosting the podcast, because believe it or not, guys, that it is not all just off the cuff. Nick does put a script together, and he puts down questions, and we do actually follow a structure. And for the guys that have been on the podcast, there is actually a process involved with getting him in and stuff like that, isn't there, Nick? Like it's
a whole process.
Yeah, like it's a whole process. It's not just send him a text and wait for him. So and this has been something that has not just happened overnight. We're consistently, even now, right now, as you guys listen to this, we're constantly working on it and try to perfect it. And, we were talking about maybe changing the room and this, that, and the other. And I was throwing ideas out there. But, we're constantly trying to perfect it. And no, it's not a money maker. If anything, we're actually trying to give back. So by doing what we're doing. So, for me, probably the hardest thing, if I could really work it out, is basically, it might not seem like it, but believe it or not all guests that come on are super talkative. And you tend to find that once the mic's off, that's when the good stuff's there. So it's up to me, and it's been something that I've had to learn along the way, and I'm still fucking learning it now, is how do I extract the good stuff out of someone, because not everyone is media ready.
Yeah, not everyone's been in front of a camera.
Yeah. So But tell us about, you know what I mean, about your experiences with getting guests on, because you deal with all the guests before they actually even get here and well after as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What's that like? Because you reach out to heaps.
Yeah, I reach out to a lot of people every week.
Yeah.
But it's also, I don't just reach out to anyone and everyone. I look for a certain type of person.
Yeah.
Obviously, construction related is the most important thing.
Yeah.
But the next thing is they need to have some sort of personal brand, whether they have 100 followers or 20,000 followers. If I can see their face on their social media, I can see them actively trying to put out good content. I'm like, oh yeah, this person will be good to interview.
Yeah.
Just because you can tell they're putting effort in.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing.
And just like the little thing about, like, remember how like early on we were, you know, we didn't want people that had 5 followers, but then we didn't want to, because I feel like, I don't know, there might be some of you guys listening here that might be thinking about doing your own. And I would fully recommend doing it. But, you know, if you're trying to reach for someone that's got 5 million followers, good luck. You know what I mean? It's not going to happen. So you really have to build that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You got to build that audience and that.
It's even like when we started, a lot of our guests were people we had like either loose connections to or were in the same like follow account as the company page. But now that we're growing, the company page is growing, we've been able to reach bigger guests.
Yeah, and I feel like it'll continue down that path, but it's like you got to crawl before you walk. Like by the time this comes out, we would have been doing it for nearly 12 months.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You know what I mean? So it definitely doesn't happen overnight. Like, and you know, you got to invest in the gear, you got to invest in guys to do it, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's 12-month worth of investment to basically get to how we are now. And you know, as Nick said, episode 21. It is a bit of a milestone, especially for someone like for myself, you know. You know, I've put down the money for it, invested into it. Something that I've had to put myself out there for all you guys that are listening. You guys have heard the fucking story, and people have thrown shade my way. So I've had to also put myself out there to the public, and you know. But I set myself a goal at the start of the year, and no matter what was going to happen, I wanted to stay consistent with it. So that's been consistency. Has been the one main thing. And yes, not every week. If you guys that do listen every week, not every week has been the best. But hey, little sweetener. Keep listening because it will get better as we get better guests. And at the end of the day, right, we need people to listen. To build the audience, to push the thing, so we can get better guests. All right, that's how it works. So
I'm just going to cut you off quickly. Because I don't think we've like publicly said this before. You mentioned it's like a big investment, not just money, time as well. Like if it's a big investment, why start a podcast? What's the drive behind it?
I think when you get to I think for me anyway, like it was always a passion of mine to like content as a whole has always been a passion. It's always been something, as I said to you, it's always been something that I've wanted to do. But also it's not the money maker for me. Do I need to do it? No. But also I like doing it. I like getting out there, and I feel like ultimately for people that are starting up, you know, that haven't come from X amount or whatever, this is a very even playing field. All right. You can build something for yourself, and you put yourself out there to the public, and I never started it, and I remember sitting Nick down right at the start. I never started it, and I never turned to him and ever said that we're doing this because I need you to bring in leads. I need you to bring in work, right? Because I feel like a lot of people, this isn't just the podcast part, but a lot of people, even with content, they push content for an ulterior motive. So it's to get more business, to build that, like they need to hit a target. Like we have goals that we want to get to, right? But whether or not we get there is irrelevant. As long as we stay consistent each week, each month, and we do what we do, we'll ultimately get there in the end, right? As long as we're, you know, at the plate, batting consistently, eventually we're going to hit, you know, a really good ball, and it's gonna go for ages. But if you're not there, you're never going to hit. And I feel like a lot of people just start down the journey, and I feel like that's why the statistic is so shit. Is it's you know, it's easy to get the first 2-3 guests of a podcast, right? You get your friends, your family, your person that you know. You might have a friend that's doing very well and he has a really big audience, right? So it's very easy for that, like 3, 4, 5 guests at the start. You get your equipment, you get your iPhone, your cameras, whatever the fuck you want to do. You set up a corner in your house. Boom, you shoot it. You think, oh, this is mad. You know what I mean? It's mad. You post it up. Guess what happens? Absolutely fucking nothing, right? You might get 10 people listen.
Maybe 10 people.
Maybe, right? You might get 10 people listen, whatever. And then the harsh reality sits in once you get past that, like 4 or 5, where it's like, oh, people aren't really listening, or maybe people start throwing shade your way, oh, this is shit, or, you start overthinking it where... Yeah, so I just feel like that, that was never the reason why we started it. So, but yeah, back to your question, why would I do it? Why did I do it? And why have I got to episode 21 and we're already pushing ahead past 21 as we speak? I basically just want to give value back to the community, the people that actually want to listen in, like you guys that are listening. I want to give value back to you guys. Is it going to be value every week? Probably not. I'll try my best, but that's pretty much why I do it. And if it brings me more leads, more contacts, people want to get on, it builds the audience, then so be it. But I'm still going to keep doing it regardless. So, I just feel like number one tip, don't do it for an ulterior motive. Do it because you actually want to do it. And,
it helps you be consistent. Like if your drive is just wanting to give value out compared to like trying to get more business, even in those lower peaks, you still have the driving force behind you. Yeah. So like you still want to consistently do it.
That's it. Like, and I don't let it discourage me. Like when we have those months or, we're in a bit of one now, like with engagement and stuff like that. Yeah. It doesn't discourage me, right? I just say the same thing to you. Keep bringing it in. Yeah. Keep doing the same thing. Keep doing the same thing. And we'll catch it again. You know what I mean? Just keep doing that. So yeah, that's pretty much the answer to that question on why I like to do it. And,
makes sense.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So, but for you, like, tell the listeners what it's like, because you don't just do stuff for us, right? You do stuff for heaps of different content creators. I don't know if you do other podcasts. You've probably been in contact with people that have wanted to do a podcast, or maybe you've also thought about doing a podcast. Like, what's the common denominator that you see? Like, why it either doesn't go off, or is it because people are concerned about what they're going to say, how they're going to say it? Have they got the experience? Like, what is the common thing that you think that sort of stops people from getting to that episode 21?
I think the main thing I notice, this is not even podcast, this is just content in general, that I've seen, like, that the reason I've seen a lot of people fall off is everyone likes to start something. A diet, a new career path, new side project, side hustle. Everyone likes to start something. And then, the first 2, 3, 4 weeks, they're doing it every day, probably doing more than they need to every day. But then it's when you're hitting like month 3, month 4, like all the hype from your family and friends has worn off. Your videos aren't doing so great.
Yeah, and it happens, doesn't it?
Yeah, it happens.
It happens
like,
with like
every single person I know. Exactly. It happens.
Like the engagement, or like doesn't matter. You could post the best content, right? It's not going to be a linear. Like it's not going to be a straight line up.
And if it is, then it's going to be a straight line down straight after.
Exactly. Like and that's like, correct me if I'm wrong. Like even the same stuff that you do for us, like with the company. Like, bro, we go through ups and downs, right? Like some months I'd message Nick and be like, "Oi, what the fuck? Like this is gone up. Like this is crazy." And then other months will just be quiet, But what are you gonna do? Do you just
give up, or
do you just give up, or do you just keep going? But I guess it just comes back to like, and it's also like talking about people that want to do content. I think we touched on this on the last one. Don't worry, guys, I'm coming back. We're going to talk about podcasts, but it's the same, it's the same sort of shit. But basically, it's the same thing. Like a lot of people want to be a content creator, all right? But when it actually turns from being a content creator to actually being your job, where you have to do this, you have to get that done, it it takes the sweetening edge off it.
Yeah.
Right. And you would be in that same boat. You know what I mean? It eventually will happen. Right. And it doesn't matter what you do. I don't care if everyone says, oh, you love what you do. You never work a day in your life. It eventually at a point in time, it'll become mundane to a degree.
Yeah.
And it'll just be the stuff that you have to do and not always the stuff that you want to do. It's the same as me. Look at me. It's not always, you don't just get to do what you want to do all the fucking time. You still got a job that you need to do.
Yeah.
All right. So, but anyway, yeah, back to podcast related stuff for you guys that are listening. So, yeah, so that's sort of been my journey in regards to, hosting it and, some tips and tricks. Basically, some tips that I would give you guys that are looking to start. And you don't have the capacity to get yourself a room, get yourself equipment and all that sort of stuff. I would just stay like very simple. You know what I mean? Get yourself your phone. You don't have to shoot. You don't even have to record it, right? You can just do the audio.
Yeah, just do audio, yeah.
Just do the audio. But stay consistent with whatever you decide to do. If you decide that you want to talk about fashion, you want to talk about clothes, you want to talk about food, I would love to do a podcast once a week, right? But the reality is, I don't think we're in a position yet to be there. So I set myself, I'm just talking to you guys in regards to how I come up with this concept of doing it and how it's become a reality. And we've been able to keep the momentum and keep it consistent. The start, I said to myself, I'm not going to be like one of those guys where I'm going to say, okay, because we could have easily at the start gone once a week. I had the guests there, everything there. But then I would have fucked up the thing, and then I would have had to, and then I would have skipped post and would have been able to schedule post, this, that, and the other, right? So I set myself a clear goal, once every 2 weeks, right? We're at a point now where I could probably pump it to once a week, but I'm not going to. I'm going to keep consistent once every 2 weeks, once every 2 weeks, once every 2 weeks. So it doesn't matter. You don't need to do every week. You don't need to do every day. You don't need to do whatever it is. Whatever you pick to do, just stay consistent with it. So if you want to start one talking about food or clothes, say to yourself, okay, every second Tuesday at this time, I'm going to upload one. Regardless of no one listens or I get 5 people listen, it's going up either way. And it doesn't need to be an hour long. It doesn't need to be half an hour long. You will know, like for us, we know now that, and this has been something that we've had to learn along the way, yeah? There's a sweet spot of listening. If it goes for an hour and 40 minutes, the engagement's going to drop.
Yeah.
Right? If it goes for 10 minutes, the engagement's probably going to drop. So there's a sweet spot there, but for us anyway, it's about half an hour to 45 minutes usually. Anything over that 45-minute mark, 50-minute mark, you're pushing it.
All right, guys, congratulations. You're halfway through this episode. I hope you guys are really enjoying it. But first, I just want to make a special thank you to Ideal Group Australia. Without them, I wouldn't be able to bring this podcast to you. So special thank you. I hope you guys are enjoying it. Buckle in and get ready to listen to the end of this episode.
But it's usually that half an hour, 45-minute mark is the sweet spot. Yeah.
And just to bring that point back, we wouldn't have ever found that sweet spot if we weren't consistent with our early uploads. We had to get through those 1.5, 2 hour long recordings to figure out, it's actually shorter than our audience likes.
Yeah.
So the faster you can pump out your 10 crap videos, the sooner you'll get to your good videos and let's start building your audience.
And how funny is it though? Me and you would, the time when it starts goes like that. All right. So if you guys that are listening, you would look at the video and be like, oh, it's 40 minutes. Like, oh, you guys are just yapping. But it actually is difficult to keep structure when you're meeting someone, because for me, Nick does all the talking to them before and after. The first time I meet them, unless it's someone that I know that I say to Nick, get them on, I usually only meet him once I see him walk through the door in 30 seconds. So if we click, we can talk for 2 hours, all right? So I have to keep it very structured to a degree. And that's why sometimes when you guys are listening, you might hear me cut them off or interject a question. That's just me just trying to get the best value that I can. And as Nick said, it's all trial and error. We remember sitting there and it was we did one at an hour and 10 minutes and we were like, maybe this is a little bit too long, fuck, you need to probably cut it down a little bit. So yeah, it's all just trial and error. But as Nick said, you got to really go, and same as the intros.
Yeah.
Intros, You guys listen to episode 1. Was I the most confident? Hell no. I definitely wasn't. So, intros, tone of voice, because not everyone wants to be listening to someone like this. Hey guys, welcome back to episode 20. You know what I mean? You have to talk with a bit of enthusiasm and stuff like that. So Nick likes to refer to my voice as my podcast voice. So
it's not how he talks in real life.
Yeah. But isn't it funny though? Like as soon as the mic's off, they change. Yeah, like they relax. You see their shoulders like go from here to like here. Yeah.
Even if they're not consciously doing it, it happens every single time. It's like, we needed that 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, Nick sometimes like he'll like come in and be like, just like like sussly like move the mic to their mouth just to see if we can get it. But it's but it's been crazy. But hey, for you guys that are listening, continue listening, and we really appreciate the support. It's been up till now, it's been good. We got a lot, like even today, like we got some bigger guests coming in now. But we need you guys to listen and pump the podcast and tell people about it and share it and this, that, and the other. We really, really, really need you guys to do that because, as you guys know, we're not me and Nick. We're still in the game. We're still young. We're not 50 or 60 telling you back in our day, this is how we do it. We are young. We're still in our own journeys, both me and him. And, we're not like the generic podcast. We're not sponsored by anyone. We're not affiliated with any sort of way. We don't environmental sustainability, talking about this, talking about that. There is no pigeonhole with this podcast, right? So the pool of guests that we can get is huge, but we're not going to be able to access the top quality in that pool if we don't get people, pushing the stuff. So,
I think that brings us to a next good point, which you slightly mentioned just then, is value. If you are wanting to start a podcast or just content in general, like you got to think, if you're wanting to succeed in the content game, you have to sort of think of it like a business. No one's going to watch your stuff if you're not providing any value. Entertainment, knowledge, advice, tips, it's got to be there. And I think that's a big reason why we started to structure our podcast. It's not super rigid. We still structure in a way to let it flow off the convo. But if our guests start yapping or if they're not yapping enough, we got those points there to just round them back in and try bring out the best in our guests. And we both listen to a lot of podcasts. I've also clicked off a lot of podcasts because sometimes it's like, what the hell are they talking about? This is not relevant.
Because it is easy. It is easy. Like, and me and you don't know. When these guys come in, we don't know if they're going to talk a lot or if they're not going to talk a lot. And it is hard to really extract the best out of the guests. And I feel like as the podcast grows and you get better guests, that challenge would probably become easier because you know what they're coming into. But for us, and it'd be the same battle for you guys that are listening if you want to get out there and do your own. It's the same hurdle that you're going to go through is, if you don't have an audience and they don't know what they're getting, and like, Nick would hear it all the time. Like he sits on every single podcast. So he would hear me have to do the spiel and why, the value side of it, why I'm doing it. Who's our audience? Why do I do it? I do it because I'm trying to bring value to the construction community and the people that follow us, right? Because for the vast majority, a lot of you guys are in construction. That doesn't mean that I'm trying to pigeonhole the podcast, but the name says it all. On-site, insight, that's what it is, right? How do we do it? Why do we do it? That's why I do it, right? Who's our audience? Our audience statistically ranges between early 20s to early 40s, I think. 30s, early 40s, somewhere like that. Male, predominantly. How do we know that? Because we're in episode 21 and Nick does statistics and stuff like that. So we know that is primarily our listeners, right? That will evolve and change over time. But, that's, and that's what I have to tell them when they sit down, because if you guys are thinking of starting it, you need to open up. You need to tell, I had to tell them a personal story about me, how I got here, how do we fund it, Why do we do it? This is why we do it. Blah, 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 blah. And I tell them, and it's about a 10 to 15 minute spiel. And then we just get talking. And this has been something that I've learned over time as well. This is something that no one likes talking about in regards to podcasts, but trying not to get all the good stuff out of them before it starts recording, right? So because early episodes, we would be talking 15 minutes and I'd get all the good stuff out of them.
Yeah.
How they started, why did it fail, blah, 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 blah. Then we'd start recording and they would have already answered it all. Right. So you really don't want to when you sit down with them, you're really just talking about yourself. You're giving them the brief and the sort of questions that you're going to ask, and you don't want them really to talk at all.
Yeah.
You want to start recording, boom, and then start asking them the questions, because you don't want them to preempt the question. You want them to answer it organically to the best of their ability. So, but hey, these are all the small things, that like no one really talks about. And this is stuff that me and you have had to you see it, like it's fucking... Yeah, it's crazy. But hey, we're giving you guys all the tips and tricks. So if you are looking to do your own, this is all the stuff that you got to go through and think about and do it. So
he's dying.
Oh yeah, I'm dying. So yeah, have you got anything else that you want to,
Before we move on to some analytics, I've got a question for you as a host.
Yeah.
How because before we started the podcast, let me collect my thoughts. Before we started the podcast, the only talking on camera you were really doing was the Ideal Page stuff, which also wasn't much. So how what would you say to someone looking to start to what's something you tell them to help them break out of their shell, but then also what's something you tell them to just be a good host and get the best out of their guests?
I think this is something that this is like a little thing as well. So when we travel with my wife, I don't mind talking in front of the camera. Right? That is, I'm an introvert in public. Introvert.
Yeah.
Right. I do not like talking in public. I do not like meeting randoms. But my wife, on the other hand, extrovert. She can go there and take her food back to the restaurant and be like, "This is wrong." Not me. Right? She can do that. But then on camera, she gets weird.
Yeah.
Right? So I basically nutted it out. It just comes down to you not really giving a fuck about what anyone else thinks. Right? So I used to get wrapped up in early days, if you guys want to really wind it all back on how I used to talk, right? Because the podcast, we basically run it. For the most part, you guys that are listening, we don't re-go at it. Nick might chop small things out here and there, but for the most part, you guys are listening to it as it comes out of my mouth. There's no second take.
Edit it much,
right? There's no second take really. So as far as I think, it just comes down to confidence and just understanding that it's not going to be perfect. You're going to listen to yourself and you're going to hate it. Just don't listen to yourself. If you're going to do it, here's a tip: get someone else to edit it for the first 10.
Yeah.
Right? The beauty is Nick edits it, so he listens to it. Could I do it if I was editing and I had to listen to myself? Probably not. So that would be that's actually a good one. Is if you want to go down the path of doing a podcast, get a friend or someone that you know that can edit, right, the audio. Hire someone and just say to them, for the first 10, this is what I want you to do, right? And do not listen to it. Don't even listen to it when it goes up. Just let it fly. Let it go to 10. Get to episode 10. And then listen to the first one. Yeah. And then write down. Because by then, guess what? By episode 10, you'd be in the rhythm of talking. You would be in the thing. You'd start feeling a little bit confident. And then you can go back and listen and then go, okay, well, this is what I don't want to say and do want to say them, et cetera, et cetera. I realized episode 1, when I got to episode 10, I listened back. I rarely listen back now, but I do every now and again. But I realized that I used to say a lot of, a phrase would be, yeah, you know, right? I realized that in episode 1, or it was maybe, I think there was another phrase or something, but it was just a continuous thing that I would say that was another one as well. But yeah, these are all the things that I feel if I sat there and edited the first episode, would I have uploaded it after listening to that dog shit? Probably not. Probably not, because I would have been too self-conscious and being like, oh, I sound like an idiot. So, yeah, that's all I could say. As far as like building that confidence up, it's just a muscle. You just gotta do it. Yeah, you just gotta do it.
Reps in the
just
gym.
gotta do it. And if you are finding yourself second guessing yourself and you don't like it, take that tip. Find a friend, get someone else, anyone. Right, or hire someone. Save a bit of money and hire someone. Pay them $100 just to chop up.
2024. Surely you know someone here.
Reach out to Nick. You know what I mean? Like, do something, and they can. You give them $100 and they just chop the podcast. It's just audio. All they're doing is listening and chopping and editing and boom, boom, boom. Adding. If you want to add an intro with music, this, that, and the other, it's pretty easy. So, just do that and do not listen to it. Don't listen to it. Just let it go and then revert back to it at a later date once it's up. Yeah. So, because I would have listened to my first one and I would have hated it.
Same.
Oh.
I hate that.
Yeah. Oh, dude. Yeah. It's not the best, but yeah. And that goes the same, with videoing and like me and Nick sitting here, like I'm more talking the construction stuff now, like when we put up reels and that. If I really get wrapped up in I sound ridiculous, I'm saying the wrong word when I'm, I sound cocky or I sound this, that, and the other, like I never fucking post anything. Just put it up. You're either going to hate it or love it. They're either going to hate it or love it. And as the thing says, make them feel something either way. I got that quote. So it basically just means either way, they're going to feel something, regardless of whatever you fucking try to do. They're going to either feel good about it, bad about it, hate you, love you. That's not your objective. Your objective is to push content out there and try to get as much value as you can. That's it.
There's going to be a lot of hate. So you just got to focus on the people you're trying to target.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? Jump on our TikTok and have a look. Have a look. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's about it. So, you got anything else?
No, it was,
all right. Well, yeah, it was a nice little short one for you guys. This podcast was definitely not going to be a long one. Don't worry, we're not running out of guests. But I just said to Nick initially when we scheduled this one in, because episode 21, believe it or not, it's actually a bit of a milestone for myself. Doesn't mean I'm going to go home and light a candle and celebrate with a bottle of champagne, right? But it just means that we've stayed consistent and we've actually been able to get there. Because the consistency part is my biggest driver. Regardless of the numbers and this, that, and the other. But hey, I would love it if you guys want to push the podcast and share it and just go hard, because as I said, I'm going to get the best guest possible and give as much value as I possibly can back to you guys that are listening every single week or every single 2 weeks. So and this one here is merely just a thank you, and we hope you guys keep listening every 2 weeks. We will do our job. Nick will do his job.
They'll be uploaded every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Just so you know, this is episode 21. We just dropped episode 15.
Yeah. So there
we're working, don't worry.
Yeah. So there you go. So there's the thing on how far we are ahead. Yeah. So by the time you guys hear this, that's where we'll be at. So hey, I don't know when this one's coming out, but Merry Christmas.
Yeah, I think it'll be around Christmas time. So
Merry Christmas to you guys.
Happy New Year's.
Happy New Year's. Have a fucking mad Christmas holiday. Enjoy yourselves. And buckle in for 2025. We've got some really, really good guests locked in, ready to go. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Give us a follow.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to this week's episode. If something hit home for you, it would mean the absolute world to us if you could like and share this podcast with someone else that would benefit from it. Tune into next week's episode, as this will be one that you don't want to miss.